Diablo is an iconic series, but if you haven't played any of the older games, you might be a little bit intimidated. Isn't that the hardcore basement PC gamer RPG where I need millions of guides to understand how anything works? Well, we're pleased to say you'd be wrong. Diablo 4 is far more accessible than it's ever been before, and we're convinced that a ton of you will love it, even if you haven't played a Diablo game before. Here's a big disclaimer for older Diablo fans. We're not just saying with this that the game is easier, we're just saying it's become more accessible. In fact, we think you older fans are going to like it more than the last game, because they return to the darker aesthetic of Diablo 2. But this video will still be targeted more to the, let's say, casual, maybe even console player base. So let's not gatekeep here, there's enough Diablo 4 for everyone. What has Diablo 4 done so well, and why are we recommending it particularly to newcomers? Let's start with the world itself. Unlike the last game, Diablo 4 uses an open world system that you guys are going to be completely familiar with. Just like GTA, for example, Fog of War covers the map and you go to a new location and you reveal more of the map. It's that simple. You find waypoints along the way in different towns and you can just teleport whenever you want, wherever you want. Hell, we even have mounts now if you'd rather take the scenic route. Now, we think this open world approach is going to be far more rewarding for newer and older players because the urge to explore is naturally incited. Next up, let's talk about how easy Diablo 4 is to play with your mates. You don't all need a PC setup for this franchise anymore. From day one, you can play on all major platforms and crossplay works just fine. Plus, they've done a great job of adapting the game for controllers. This isn't a game that feels weird when you're not playing it with a mouse. Even inventory management has been cleverly streamlined, which is quite rare to see for console ports. One of our players in the office who tried out Diablo 4 is actually a long-term PC player, and even he tried with controller and found it completely fluid and quite natural. So if that doesn't speak to how good it's been done, nothing will. Now let's answer a complaint or a fear that some of you are going to have about playing isometric top-down games. Maybe particularly if you're a console player, you might be thinking this just isn't for you. A lot of players feel like maybe they're just controlling on a 2D board and they're not really in the 3D world. But in Diablo 4, it really doesn't actually feel like this. It's hard to explain, but when you're actually playing, it feels a lot less like this, and a lot more like, oh, I might get bashed for this, a lot more like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. You feel like you're moving in and around that world. It's hard to explain, but we promise you, if you're a console player and you don't traditionally like isometric games, don't let it put you off at least trying Diablo 4. You can even play it zoomed in completely if you want, and at that point, it really does feel like just an over-the-shoulder third-person RPG. Another great thing about Diablo 4 for newcomers is that making a build is now far more straightforward. There are no noob traps. You don't need to Google every single skill and talent to make sure you optimize. Instead, all of your options are presented clearly and they're fairly well balanced with each other. And inventory management is far easier. You're going to know what items are good or bad based on if they come up with green or red numbers. And if you don't like an item, mark it as junk, go to your blacksmith and he'll scrap it. And lastly, the community itself. The Diablo community just feels a lot more welcoming these days. There was definitely an era when Diablo was more of a basement dweller's delight, but these days it's completely different. Whether you go on Reddit, Twitter or YouTube to find out more about Diablo, you're going to find fans being a lot less toxic and a lot more welcoming than you might expect. Please don't prove me wrong in the comments. That's why we think you should really try out Diablo 4. We're convinced that newcomers are going to be less intimidated and have a lot more fun than they might realise. Let us know in the comments if this is going to be your first Diablo.